of course, is to celebrate spoken word, poetry, and there are so many wonderful authors here. So we have an expert in the field and someone very energetic. So we want to introduce the Master of Ceremonies this evening, Mr. Daniel Chacón.
Sparky! It's said that when Garcia Lorca would do a poetry reading, he would always say, I'd like to invite the spirit of brotherhood into the room, or the spirit of fraternity into the room. And that's kind of what I'm doing right now. Sparky! Because when Andres and I were roommates, and I had pot, and because I used to have a really good source back when pot was hard to get, way before it was legal, I'd be in my room, and I'd be like writing fiction all night long. And I had 2 windows, and I would open the windows, and my hair would be blowing, and I'd be like this mad pianist. And then I would say, okay, it's time to have some pot. Sparky! And that was the call. And if Andres wanted to partake, he would yell from his room, "Ugh!" And then we'd meet in our room, and in my room, and we would smoke, and I would read to him, and he would read to me. And, you know, it just blows me away that over 20 years after his death, that here we are celebrating his work. And my God, there is so much love in this room. And I know that sounds corny, but I mean it. And I don't mean just because I love these poets. These poets are amazing. And just I'm intimidated to be in the same room with them. But family, you know, the Montoya family and you know, people I grew up with and you know, poets I've known for so long that have loved Andres, and Juan Felipe Herrera, who loved Andres and who Andres loved. And I remember when Juan Felipe came out with a poem in the New England Review, Andres had a copy of it, and he goes, "You got to listen to this." And he would read it, and he goes, "It's jazz, man, it's jazz." And I'm trying to think, you know, just 20 years after his death, there's so much, you know, he's still alive. And so, like Lorca, when I say Sparky, I'm basically inviting the spirit of Andrés Montoya into the room. But I'm trying to think, like, okay, where did all this start? How did this happen? 20 years after his death, someone who came out with one book, whose book he didn't even get to see because he died before it came out, but it won the American Book Award, and it was so influential. And thanks to Francisco Aragon, this incredible poetry prize named after him. I mean, it just, you know, how did it all start? And I'm thinking, any narrative, you can pretty much start it anywhere. And if you have ever been in a fiction writing workshop, you'll know this is true, because people will say, I think you should cut this first scene and start with the second scene. And it always sounds good. Like, yeah, that does sound good, right? Because you could do that, right? You could start a story anywhere. But tonight, I want to start it with when Andres was in the hospital. He knew he was dying. It wasn't very far from here, less than a mile from here. And people would come to visit him. And man, they would come to comfort him, but they would leave comforted. He was such a man of faith. It was amazing. And but one time, you know, I would hang out there a lot. Sometimes we would irritate each other, get on each other's nerves, but I didn't leave. And he didn't want me to leave because, you know, that's what you're like, right? And I would stay there. And then one time I says, okay, well, I'm going to take off. And he goes, wait, I need to talk to you. Wait until everybody leaves. And they all left. And he says, you know, I know I don't have much time left. I want you to take over all my poetry, everything I've done. Just ask Leslie and my dad to just give you everything. And I go, well, what do you want me to do with it? And he says, anything you want. I don't care. Just, I want you to handle it. And I didn't. I ignored his dying wish for at least 2 years. And I think the reason why I ignored it is because I felt guilty going up and saying, hey, you know, Andres wanted me to handle everything. But several years later, I ran into Malachias and Leslie at a conference in Houston, I think it was. And that's when I told him, Andres wanted me to, you know, have all this stuff. Not even a week later, I get this pile of stuff. And it took me, I don't know, 10 years or so to go through it and to find what I thought represented the spirit of Andrés Montoya, and that's the jury of trees. And I'm just so grateful that we're here to celebrate that today. I have so many people to thank, but first I was asked to thank, I have an official list of people who need to be thanked. And it's a great list because this would not have happened without them. You know, I like to think it started with that conversation, but really it started with everybody in here. It started with Connie Hills. It started with Francisco Aragon. It started with everybody. And the narrative, you know, depends on, you know, well, anyway, I'm going on now. We'd like to thank the Poetry Foundation and Bilingual Press. We'd like to thank the Master of Fine Arts program in Creative Writing at Fresno State. The English department staff, Jefferson Beavers and Lisa Galvez, and 6 of the graduate student assistants who have helped put this event together. Unfortunately, I don't have their name. Francisco Aragon and Letras Latinas, University of Notre Dame's Institute for Latino Studies, Arte Américas, especially Frank Delgado, Vivian Velasco Paz, Diana Rodriguez, and Jenny Rostro. Macario Montoya and Griselda Ceja Montoya of Campesino Cellars. They're the ones who are providing the wine. And a special thank you and welcome to Malaquias Montoya and Leslie Salkowitz Montoya and the whole Montoya family, Maceo, Alejandra. And I would also like to introduce, who would like to say a few words and thank Dean Saúl Jiménez-Sandoval of Fresno State's College of Arts and Humanities. But wait, let me say one thing. When Andres and I were students, man, if there were a Latino dean, we would have been really excited. So, welcome.
It's great to see you. It's great to see such great energy here. I don't know if I have the duende of Lorca, but I'll do my best to keep on with the Sparky. So, yeah, right. So, you know, history is a funny thing. When I was at Irvine in 1996, Alejandro Morales back then reached out to me and said, I need some graduate student who can read for the next prize, Children Latino Prize for Irvine, and it's poetry, and you're working with poetry, and I'd like you to be one of the readers. And I said, all right, I'll see what I can do. And then I came across the Icebreaker Sings back then, and I just completely fell in love with it. And of course, it won that year. And then it stayed with me throughout. And this conference gave me the opportunity to go back and do an archaeology of memory of what it is that Montoya means to me. And to me, as someone who came to the Valley when I was 10 and grew up in Fowler after that. And again, history is a small little thing that there's this residual sort of energy that is coming back and forth with us, right? Whoever thought that Malaquias would have graduated from Fowler High in the 50s, that then Andres would have graduated from Fowler High in the 80s, and then that I would graduate from Fowler High in 1989 and go on to Irvine, right? So I feel sort of like a connection that I've had in my mind all of these years. And when I started reading him, rereading him, I started seeing this consciousness of self, this bravery, this amazing courage to say, this is who I am. I am Andrés Montoya, and I am Andrés Montoya by doing the following. I take both of my hands and I plunge them into the earth of Fresno County, and I hear the voices of the past in order to then interpret the voices of the present. And based on this vision that he has, then he presents us with this magical, love-infused, powerful sense of being that says, this society that we live today is a society that tricks us into thinking that the material is where it is, that love does not mean anything, that at the end poetry is just a spoken word that is sold and bought and traded, but it's not. With his poetry, we find the power, the revolutionary power of the self that says, we are more than that. We are a society that is bound by love. We are a society that is bound by history. And more than anything, we are a society that is bound by the responsibility to create a community. And within that, he unveils the mockery of what we see as truth today, and he then reveals the power of poetry, like the true poets do, always do. They create a community for the sense of moving forward. So I'm honored to be here. I'm honored to support this conference. I'm honored that we have such incredible people working in the MFA program. I'm honored that you are here, Daniel, and that you took over this, and that you brought us then the second book that is just as amazing as the first book. I'm honored to have met Malachias, and I'm honored that we are all here sharing this moment that took thousands and thousands of years to happen, right? It's right here in the now. So thank you for being here, and let's move on.